I went on a business trip, and when I returned, I found my house rented out. The money will be for your sister's wedding, said my father while my mother nodded. You can rent a room for now. So I handed them a folder, and when they opened it, their faces turned pale. My name is Alonzo. And if you had asked me 6 months ago what I valued most in life, I would have said my house without hesitation. It's not a mansion. It's not a palace with marble columns or anything like that. It's a normal 2-story house with a small front garden, a modest pool in the back, a couple of special details. A fireplace I installed myself, a kitchen with granite countertops that I carefully chose, and a large, comfortable sofa where I would lie down to watch movies with my dog Max. That house cost me years of work, long nights at the office, saving every peso I could. I'm not a millionaire. I'm just a guy who works hard and after much sacrifice managed to have a place to call home. A few months ago, my boss offered me an opportunity I couldn't refuse. A project abroad, in a city thousands of kilometers from here. It was an important job, one of those that opens doors. It would last 5 months, maybe 6. And although the idea of leaving my house in Max made me nervous, I thought it was an investment for my future. Before leaving, I asked my parents, Francisco and Isabel, for a favor. I gave them a copy of the keys to my house and asked them to take care of Max, feed him, take him for walks, and keep an eye on the house. Don't worry, son, my dad told me with that deep voice he always uses when he wants to sound reliable. Everything will be fine. My mom nodded, smiling, and gave me a hug. I trusted them. Why wouldn't I? They were my parents. The project was exhausting. I worked 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. I spent weekends checking emails or sleeping to regain energy. I barely had time to talk to my parents, but every 2 weeks they would send me a message saying Max was fine, that the house was in order. Everything under control, my dad would write. I believed them. I imagined Max running around the yard chasing his favorite ball, and that gave me peace amid the chaos. I finished the project earlier than expected. 5 months instead of 6. I was exhausted but happy. I had done a good job, and my boss was impressed. They gave me an extra week of rest before returning to the office, and all I wanted was to get to my house, lie down in my bed, open a cold beer, and spend the entire day with Max. I bought a return flight without telling anyone. I wanted to surprise my parents. Maybe invite them to dinner to thank them for taking care of everything. I boarded the plane with a smile, imagining the moment I would open the door to my house and Max would come running to lick my face. I arrived at the airport at midnight. I took a taxi, and as the driver drove through the familiar streets of my city, I felt the weight of the last few months fading away. When the taxi stopped in front of my house, I spent a second looking at the facade. There was my home. The porch lights were on, and everything seemed in order. I took out my suitcase, paid the driver, and walked to the door with the keys in my hand. I was so tired I just wanted to fall into bed. I put the key in the lock, but it didn't turn. I frowned and tried again. Nothing. I thought maybe the key was defective or the lock was stuck. I shook the door a little, hitting it with my shoulder, but it wouldn't give. What the hell? I muttered. I started banging on the door harder, thinking maybe something was jammed. Suddenly, I heard quick footsteps from the other side, and the door swung open. A man I didn't know came out like a bull, with a face red with fury. He was tall, with a scruffy beard, wearing an old t-shirt. "What the fuck are you doing?" he shouted, pushing me backward. "Get out of here before I call the police." I stood frozen, the key still in my hand. "Excuse me, this is my house," I said, trying to stay calm, though my heart was starting to beat faster. "I'm the owner. Who are you?" The guy laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. It was a laugh of contempt. "The owner? Huh? We live here, friend. We've been paying rent for 3 months. If you don't leave right now, you're going to regret it." "Rent?" The word hit me like a punch. I didn't understand anything. "That's impossible," I said, raising my voice. "This is my house. I haven't rented anything. Get out of here right now." The man didn't move. Instead, he took out his phone and started dialing. "I'm going to call the police and see how you explain this, thief." The word thief made my blood boil. A thief in my own house? Before I could respond, a woman came out the door with a baby in her arms. "What's going on, Carlos?" she asked, looking between the man and me. "This guy says he's the owner of the house," the man replied without taking his eyes off me. "He's trying to break in." The woman frowned. "That doesn't make sense. We signed a contract. We paid a year in advance." A year in advance? Those words stabbed my head like a knife. I couldn't process it. My house, The house I had worked for all my life. Rented by whom? I started shouting, demanding explanations, but the man, Carlos, wouldn't back down. The situation got so tense that neighbors started looking out their windows. Finally, someone called the police, and in less than 10 minutes, a patrol car parked in front of my house. I explained everything to the officers, that I was the owner, that I had been away for work, that I had left the keys with my parents. But Carlos and his wife showed a signed and notarized rental contract. They had payment receipts, bank transfers, everything. The contract said they had paid a year's rent in advance to Francisco and Isabel, my parents. "I'm sorry, sir," said one of the policemen, looking at me with a mixture of pity and distrust. "Everything indicates they have the right to be here. The contract is legal. If you have a problem with the rental, you should resolve it with the people who signed the contract, not with the tenants." I was speechless. I looked at my house, my home, and saw that man, Carlos, standing with his arms crossed at the door, as if I were the intruder. The police asked me to leave, not to cause more problems. "This is a civil matter," said the other officer. "Take this to court if you want, but you can't remove these people now." I walked back to the taxi with my suitcase in tow, feeling like the world was collapsing. I couldn't believe it. My parents had rented my house behind my back. My house, my refuge, the place I had built with so much effort. And now, a stranger was sleeping in my bed, using my pool, living my life. I got into the taxi and gave the driver the address of my parents' house. I didn't know what I was going to say to them, but one thing was for sure. I wasn't going to let this go. When I arrived at my parents' house, it was almost 1 in the morning. I rang the doorbell hard again and again until the porch light came on. My dad opened the door in his pajamas with an annoyed face. "Alonzo, what are you doing here at this hour? Weren't you abroad?" I didn't answer. I walked straight in, and there was Max, my dog, running toward me with his tail wagging like crazy. I hugged him, feeling a lump in my throat. At least he was okay. My mom came out of the kitchen in an old robe and looked at me with surprise. "Son, what happened? Why didn't you tell us you were coming? Why did you rent out my house?" I blurted out without preamble, my voice trembling with rage. "How dare you do something like that without my permission?" A heavy silence fell. My dad scratched the back of his neck, looking at the floor. My mom crossed her arms as if she was about to give me a lecture. "It's not a big deal, Alonzo," my dad finally said, in a tone that made me want to hit him. "We needed the money. It's for Alejandra's wedding. You know how much this means to her." Alejandra's wedding? My younger sister, the spoiled child of the family. She had always been the center of attention. But this was too much. "And for that, you rented out my house without telling me?" "It's my house, Dad. It's not yours to do whatever you want with." My mom intervened with that soft voice she uses when she wants to calm things down, but at that moment, it only made me angrier. "Son, don't be selfish. It's just for a year. You can rent a room in the meantime. It's not the end of the world." Rent a room? Seriously? Me, who had worked all my life to have my own space, had to live like a college student because they decided to spend my money on my sister's wedding? Before I could respond, Alejandra came down the stairs in her pajamas with a smile that made me sick. "Hey, calm down, Alonzo," she said as if she were talking to a child. "Here's your invitation to the wedding. Be grateful I'm going to invite you, because with that attitude, I'd rather not." I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my suitcase, put the leash on Max, and left without saying a word. I wasn't going to argue with them, not at that moment. But as I walked down the street with Max by my side, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. That same night, I stayed in a cheap hotel. I didn't sleep. I spent hours thinking, planning. The next day, early, I called my lawyer and told him about the work trip, the keys I left with my parents, the tenant in my house, the rental contract, the brazen attitude of my family. "Alonzo, this is serious," he told me. "Why? We can build a case, but we need solid evidence. Can you get a copy of the rental contract? It would also be useful to have any communication with your parents where they mention the house or the money. Meet me tomorrow at 10 at my office. Bring everything you have." I told him I would be there and got to work. The first thing was to talk to Carlos. I didn't like the tenant, but he had information I needed. I got dressed, fed Max, and left him in the hotel room with a toy so he wouldn't get bored. Then I took a taxi back to my house. Yes, my house. Even though it had a stranger living in it, it was still mine. And no one was going to make me feel otherwise. When I arrived, I rang the doorbell more calmly than the night before. I didn't want another fight. I just wanted to talk. The door opened and there was Carlos, still with that sour face. "What do you want now?" he growled, crossing his arms. "I need to talk to you," I said, keeping my voice firm. "I don't want trouble. I just want to understand what happened with my house." Carlos looked at me as if he were evaluating whether it was worth talking to me. Finally, he sighed and opened the door a little more. "Come in, but don't make noise. My son is sleeping." I entered, and it was like receiving a blow to the chest. There was my living room, my sofa, my coffee table. But everything felt wrong. There were toys scattered on the floor, a blanket I didn't recognize on the sofa, a smell of food that wasn't mine. It was my house, but it wasn't. I swallowed my anger and sat down in a chair. "Explain to me how you ended up here," I said to Carlos, getting straight to the point. He sat down across from me, still with his arms crossed. "There's not much to explain. I saw an ad on the internet 3 months ago. House for rent, good price, 1-year contract. I talked to a guy, Francisco. He said he was the owner. We signed the contract, paid the year in advance, and moved in. All legal. Then you show up last night saying you're the owner and almost give me a heart attack. I thought you were a crazy person trying to break in to rob us." Hearing my dad's name from his mouth made me clench my fists. "Francisco is not the owner." "I am the owner. That house is mine. I never authorized anyone to rent it." Carlos frowned. "Look, friend, I don't know what's going on with your family, but we paid. I have the contract, the receipts, everything. If you have a problem, resolve it with them, not with us." "I need to see the contract," I said, "and any proof of the payments you made. I'm not against you, but I need to get my house back." Carlos hesitated, but in the end, he went to a drawer and pulled out a folder. "Here you go. This is what we signed, and the transfer receipts are in my email. I can print them for you if you want." I flipped through the contract. It was a standard document, but there was my dad's signature, Francisco, as the owner. There was also a bank account number in his and my mom's Isabel's name. The payments, according to the receipts Carlos showed me, were for a total of $12,000, $1,000 a month for a year, paid in a single transfer. That money was somewhere, and my parents had it. "Can I keep a copy of this?" I asked. Carlos shrugged. "Take a photo, but I'm telling you right now, we're not leaving. We paid for this place, and the police already said we have the right to stay." I didn't respond. I took out my phone, took photos of each page of the contract and the receipts. Then I thanked him, though it was hard to do, and left. As I walked toward the taxi, I felt a mixture of relief and fury. Relief because I now had something concrete, evidence I could use. Fury because every word in that contract was another stab from my parents. I went back to Diego's office, spread the evidence on his table, and we put together a folder with more documents to give to my parents. I arrived at my parents' house in the mid-afternoon. Max was with me, as always, with his leash in my hand. I rang the doorbell and waited. My mom opened the door with an expression of annoyance that changed to surprise when she saw me. "Alonso, what are you doing here?" she said, adjusting her apron. "We're busy with the wedding details. It's not a good time." "I won't stay long," I replied with a cold voice. "I just came to give you something." My dad appeared in the hallway with a wrinkled shirt, a beer in his hand, as if the whole world belonged to him. "What do you want now, Alonso? More complaints?" I didn't respond. Instead, I took the folder out of my backpack and handed it to them. "Open it," I said, looking them in the eyes. My mom frowned but took the folder. My dad approached, still with that attitude of, "This is no big deal." The two sat on the living room sofa, and I remained standing with Max at my side, observing every movement. When they opened the folder and started reading, their faces changed. First came confusion, then disbelief, and finally something I had never seen in them before: fear. The folder contained documents where Alonso demanded the immediate return of the money received to date, demanded the immediate termination of the rental, stated that he had not given authorization to rent the property, and warned that if not resolved immediately, he would proceed legally against them. Along with this were evidence such as bank statements from the tenants showing rent deposits to his parents' account. It also included photos of the tenant living in the house, a copy of the rental contract that the tenant gave him, and finally stated that they had 5 days to resolve or he would proceed legally against them. My dad was the first to speak with a trembling voice. "What is this, Alonso? Are you suing us? Your own parents?" "I'm not suing you," I said, still crossing my arms. But if you don't return the money and end the rental in 5 days, I will. It's all there. The evidence that you rented my house without my permission, the payments you received, the fake contract. If you don't comply, this goes to court. And I don't think you want that. My mom dropped the folder on the table, her hands shaking. Son, you can't do this. We don't have the money anymore. We used it for Alejandra's wedding. The venue, the catering, the dress, everything is paid for. That's not my problem, I said, feeling a cold calm that surprised me. You took my money, my house, my home. Now, you give it back to me or face the consequences. At that moment, Alejandra came down the stairs with a wedding dress half-fitted, with pins still in place. What's going on here? She asked, looking at the scene. When she saw the folder, her smile faded. What is that? It's the end of your plans if you don't return what's mine, I said, looking directly at her. You spent $12,000 that didn't belong to you. Pay it back or this gets ugly. Alejandra laughed, but it was a nervous laugh, not the mocking one from before. Are you crazy? Are you going to ruin my wedding over a stupid house? You're selfish. No, Alejandra, I said, taking a step toward her. You are the selfish ones. You took what was mine and used it for your whims. Now, face the consequences. I left the house without saying more, with Max trotting by my side. As I walked down the street, I felt my heart beating hard. But it wasn't from fear, it was from power. For the first time, I felt like I had control. 2 days later, I received a call from my mom. Her voice was different, broken, as if she had been crying. Alonzo, please, let's talk. We can't give you the money back now, it's all spent. But after the wedding, in a month we'll pay you. Don't ruin this for your sister. I laughed, though there was nothing funny about the situation. No, Mom, there's no more time. I gave you 5 days, now you have 3 left. If you don't comply, my lawyer takes over. Alonzo, please, she begged. We're your family. Family doesn't betray like this, I said, and hung up. That night, I didn't sleep well. Part of me wanted to believe they would reconsider, that they would find a way to fix this. But deep down, I knew they wouldn't. They had gone too far, and now they were trapped in their own trap. The 5th day arrived. I woke up early, put on a clean shirt, and took a taxi to my parents' house. I didn't know what to expect. Maybe they had gathered the money somehow, or maybe they would be waiting for me with more excuses. But when I arrived, what I saw left me speechless. The house was almost empty. The front door was open, and from the street, I could see there was no furniture in the living room. Not the big sofa where my dad watched soccer, not the dining table, not the flat-screen TV they were so proud of. I entered with Max at my side, and the silence was deafening. In the kitchen, there was only an old chair, one of those that no one uses. I went upstairs, and the bedrooms were the same. The mattresses had disappeared, the closets were empty, even the curtains had been torn down. I found my parents in the backyard, sitting on the ground with defeated looks. Alejandra was there too, with eyes red from crying. In front of them was a plastic bag with bundles of bills. My dad looked at me, but there was no defiance in his eyes, only exhaustion. Here's your damn money, he said, pushing the bag toward me. Take it and go. I counted the bills. It was exactly $12,000. How did you get it? I asked, though I could already imagine. We sold everything, my mom said with a broken voice. The car, the furniture, the TV, everything. Alejandra's dress, we sold it for half the price to get the money quickly. The venue and the catering didn't give us anything back, so we had to sell what was left. Are you happy now? I picked up the bag with the money and turned around. Alejandra shouted at me as I left. You're jealous. You ruined everything for us because of your stupid house. I didn't stop. I left there with Max, and as I walked down the street, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Relief. The process of getting my house back wasn't as simple as I expected. I went to talk to Carlos and his wife that same afternoon. I explained the situation to them. I showed them the letter my parents had signed terminating the contract. They weren't happy, and I don't blame them. They had paid for a year and now had to move. I returned $9,000 of the $12,000 that corresponded to the 9 months they wouldn't use. I also had to pay a $1,500 penalty for breach of contract because the document my parents signed wasn't entirely clear. I spent almost all the money they had given me, but it was worth it. Carlos and his family moved out the following week. When I entered my house, I felt a mixture of joy and sadness. I was back, but it wasn't intact. The bed had stains, the sofa was worn, and the pool had a layer of dirt that would take days to clean. But it was mine. Max ran around the yard chasing his favorite ball, and for the first time in weeks, I truly smiled. I spent the following days fixing up the house. I painted the walls, cleaned the pool, bought a new mattress. Each small change was like recovering a part of myself. It wasn't just a house, it was my home, the place I had built with my effort, and no one was going to take it from me again. A week later, I received a message from my Aunt Clara, my mom's sister. She told me Alejandra had gotten married, but not in the luxurious venue they had planned. They did it in her backyard with a simple ceremony, without catering or an expensive dress. It was nice in its own way, Clara wrote, but your parents are devastated. They have nothing. Alonzo, don't you think you were too harsh? I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I had nothing to say. My parents and Alejandra had made their choices, and I had made mine. I didn't feel guilty, but I didn't feel joy either. I just felt peace. I never spoke to them again. I didn't go to the wedding, didn't answer their calls, didn't respond to their messages. I buried that part of my life and moved on. Max and I went back to our movie nights on the sofa, walks in the park, afternoons by the pool. My house wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and that was enough. Sometimes when I'm sitting in the yard with Max by my side, I think about what happened. I don't regret anything. I did what I had to do to protect what was mine. And if someone asks me if it was worth it, I just look at my house, my home, and I know the answer is yes. Subscribe for more daily stories.